Jake Morrison pressed his face against the cold glass of the observation window. Below him, Earth spun slowly in the darkness of space. The blue and white planet looked peaceful from up here, but Jake knew better. Down there, millions of people were still cleaning up the mess from the climate wars. The space station felt quiet tonight. Most of the crew was sleeping, but Jake could not rest. Something was bothering him, though he could not say what. He had been in space for 3 years now, but Earth still felt like home. Sometimes he wondered if he would ever walk on grass again or feel real rain on his face. Can't sleep either? A voice said behind him. Jake turned around. Dr. Lisa Chun walked toward him, holding a cup of coffee. Her lab coat was wrinkled, and her hair was messy. She looked like she had been working all night. Just thinking, Jake said. What about you? Still working on those rock samples from Mars? Lisa shook her head. Something bigger than rocks, Jake. Much bigger. She moved to stand next to him at the window. We picked up a signal 3 days ago. A very strange signal. Jake felt his heart beat faster. From where? Far away. Really far away. Maybe 1,200 light years from here. Lisa took a sip of her coffee. At first, we thought it was just space noise. But it's not. It's artificial. Someone made it. The two of them stood in silence for a moment. Jake stared at the stars. There were so many of them, tiny points of light in the endless black. He had always known that somewhere out there, other people might be living on other worlds. But knowing it and hearing it were two different things. What does it say? Jake asked. That's the problem. We don't know. The signal uses math, but not our math. It's like someone built a house, but they used tools we have never seen before. Lisa's voice was quiet. But we think it might be a call for help. Jake turned to look at her. Help from what? We don't know that either. But Jake, whoever sent this signal, they're smart. Much smarter than us. And if they need help. She did not finish the sentence, but Jake understood. If beings that advanced were in trouble, what did that mean for the rest of the universe? The lights in the hallway suddenly turned on. Captain Ryan Brooks walked toward them, still in his sleeping. Clothes but wide awake. His face was serious. Morrison, Chun, good. You're both here. He stopped in front of them. We just got word from Earth Command. The signal Lisa found? 2 other stations picked it up too. It's real, and it's getting weaker. Lisa set down her coffee cup. Weaker how? Like whoever is sending it is running. Out of power, or time. Captain Brooks rubbed his eyes. There's more. We managed to decode part of it. Just a small part, but enough to know we're right. It is a distress call. Jake felt cold, even though the station was warm. What kind of distress? Captain Brooks was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. They call it the gray tide, something that swallows light. The 3 of them stood in the hallway, listening to the soft hum of the station's air recyclers. Jake looked out the window again at the stars. They seemed different now, not peaceful, but threatening. Somewhere out there, in the darkness between the stars, something was destroying worlds. Sir? Jake said. What are we going to do? Captain Brooks straightened up. We're going to help them. Earth Command is sending our best ship. They want volunteers for a mission that might not come back. Jake did not hesitate. I'll go. Lisa nodded. Me too. The captain smiled, but it was a sad smile. I thought you might say that. The ship leaves in 3 months. We'll use the new fold drive technology. It's never been tested over such a long distance, but it's our only chance to get there before the signal stops completely. Over the next few days, Jake learned more about the mission. The ship would be called the New Horizon, and it would carry 50 people. They would travel farther from Earth than any human had ever gone before. The journey would take weeks. Even with the fold drive, Jake spent his free time thinking about the signal. He imagined the people who sent it, fighting against something called the Gray Tide. He wondered what they looked like, how they lived, what their world was like. Were they like humans, or completely different? Did they have families? Did they dream? Lisa worked day and night, trying to understand more of the signal. She set up computers to listen for any changes, any new information. Sometimes Jake would find her asleep at her desk, her head resting on piles of papers covered with numbers and symbols. Any luck? He asked her one morning. She looked up at him with tired eyes. A little. I think I figured out how to say hello in their language. But Jake, the signal is getting weaker every day. And there's something else. What? I think they're not the only ones. The signal mentions other worlds, other civilizations. And they're all in danger from the same thing. She pointed to her computer screen, covered with wavy lines. This Gray Tide, whatever it is, it's not just attacking one world. It's attacking many worlds. Jake felt sick. How many? I don't know. But if we don't help them, if we don't find a way to stop this thing, it might come for us too. That night, Jake stood at the observation window again. Earth looked the same as always, blue and white and beautiful. But now he knew that somewhere in the darkness, worlds were dying. People were calling for help, and their voices were getting weaker. He thought about his sister back on Earth, working as a teacher in New York. He thought about his parents, who had lived through the climate wars and still believed that people could make things better. He thought about all the children on Earth who looked up at the stars and dreamed of adventure. Jake made a promise to himself. He would go on this mission. He would travel farther than any human had ever traveled before. And somehow, he would find a way to help the voices calling from the darkness. The stars did not look threatening anymore. They looked like a challenge. And Jake Morrison had never walked away from a challenge in his life. 3 months later, he would board the New Horizon and leave Earth behind. But tonight, he was still here, still human, still hoping. And somewhere over the rainbow of stars, someone was waiting for help to arrive. The New Horizon was the biggest ship Jake had ever seen. It stretched almost a mile from front to back, its silver hull shining in the light from Earth's sun. 50 people would call this ship home for the next few months as they traveled to. A place no human had ever been. Jake walked through the ship's long hallways, getting used to his new home. Everything was clean and new, but it felt strange too. The walls hummed with power from machines he did not understand. The air smelled like metal and recycled oxygen. This was not like the small space station where he had lived before. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Maria Santos was working on the most important part of the ship. The fold drive looked like a giant silver ring, covered in lights and wires. Maria was small, but she moved around the huge machine like she had built it herself. How does it work? Jake asked her. Maria wiped her hands on a dirty cloth. Think of space like a piece of paper. To get from one side to the other, you could walk across it. That would take a long time. Or you could fold the paper so the two sides touch, then step across. That's what this machine does. It folds space. Jake stared at the ring. Has anyone ever done this before? Over such a long distance? No, Maria said simply. We tested it on short trips to Mars and back. But this will be different. We're going to fold space across 1,200 light years. If something goes wrong. She did not finish the sentence. In another part of the ship, Dr. Alex Turner was working on the alien signal. Alex was good with languages. He could speak 7 different human languages, and now he was trying to learn his first alien one. Any progress? Jake asked when he found Alex in his small office. Alex looked up from his computer screen. His eyes were red from staring at numbers and symbols all day. A little. I think I understand how they count. They use a system based on the number 7 instead of 10 like we do. And their words, they're like music. Music? Yes. Each word has a tune to it. The meaning changes based on how high or low the sound is. Alex played a recording of the alien signal. It sounded like singing, but strange singing, beautiful and sad at the same time. What are they saying? Alex was quiet for a moment. There. Scared, Jake. Really scared. They keep saying the same words over and over. The gray comes. The light dies. Help us. But there's something else. They mention other worlds, other people. I think this gray tide has been destroying civilizations. For a long time. Jake felt cold. How long? Maybe thousands of years. The signal talks about the silent worlds and the dark stars, places where the gray tide has already won. That night, Jake could not sleep. He walked to the observation deck and looked out at the stars. In a few days, they would leave Earth behind and jump into folded space. They might never come home. They might never see Earth again. Navigator Kate Phillips found him there. Kate was young, maybe 25, but she was the best pilot the space program had ever trained. She would be the one to guide them through the fold. Nervous? She asked, standing next to him at the window. A little, Jake admitted. You? Kate smiled, terrified, but excited too. Do you know how many people have dreamed of doing what we're about to do? We're going to visit another star. We're going to meet aliens. Even if it's dangerous, even if we don't come back, we're going to do something amazing. Jake looked at her. Kate's eyes were bright with excitement. She reminded him of his sister, who always believed that tomorrow would be better than today. Double quotes Kate. What if we can't help them? What if we get there and this gray tide is too powerful? For us? Kate was quiet for a moment. Then at least they'll know they're not alone. They'll know that someone heard their call and came to help. Sometimes that's enough. The next morning, Captain Brooks called everyone together in the main meeting room. All 50 crew members sat in rows of chairs, looking at their captain. Some looked excited. Others looked scared. Jake felt both. In 24 hours, we jump, Captain Brooks said. This is the last chance for anyone to change their mind. We don't know what we'll find when we get there. We don't know if we can help. We don't even know if we can get home again. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The signal is getting weaker every day, the captain continued. If we're going to help these people, we have to go now. We have to take this chance. Dr. Lisa Chan stood up. Captain, I've been studying the signal for months now. These beings, whoever they are, they're more advanced than us. Much more advanced. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. If they can't stop this gray tide, how can we? Captain Brooks nodded. That's a good question, Lisa, and I don't have a good answer. But I know one thing. Humans are good at solving problems that seem impossible. We've done it before. Maybe we can do it again. Jake thought about Earth's history. Humans had survived ice ages and diseases and wars. They had learned to fly when everyone said it was impossible. They had gone to the moon when everyone said it could not be done. They had fixed their own planet after the climate wars nearly destroyed it. Maria Santos stood up. The fold drive is ready. I've checked every wire, every circuit, every bolt. She'll hold together. Alex Turner stood up next. I've learned enough of their language to talk to them. Basic words, simple ideas. It's not much, but it's a start. Kate Phillips was the last to stand. I've plotted our course through folded space. It's going to be a rough ride, but I can get us there. Captain Brooks looked around the room at his crew. And we go. Tomorrow morning, we leave Earth behind and travel farther than any human has ever traveled. We go to help people we've never met on a world we've never seen, against an enemy we don't understand. Jake stood up. And one by one, all 50 crew members stood up. They were ready. That night, Jake looked out at Earth one last time. The blue and white planet looked peaceful and beautiful. Tomorrow, it would be just a tiny dot of light, then nothing at all. But somewhere in the darkness between the stars, people were waiting for help. And Jake Morrison was going to make sure they got it. The new horizon was ready. The crew was ready. And tomorrow, they would fold space itself and race across the galaxy to answer a call for help. The jump through folded space felt like dying and being born again at the same time. Jake woke up on the floor of his room, his head spinning and his stomach sick. All around the ship, he could hear other people groaning and throwing up. Full drive had worked, but the trip had been hard on everyone. Kate Phillips' voice came over the ship's speakers. We made it, everyone. We're in the Kepler 442 system. But you need to see this. Jake pulled himself up and stumbled to the nearest window. What he saw made him forget about feeling sick. Below them was a planet that should have been green and blue like Earth. Instead, half of it was covered in gray. Not clouds or storms, but something solid and strange that seemed to eat the light around it. What is that? Someone whispered behind him. Jake turned to see Dr. Lisa Chun, looking pale and frightened. She was staring at the gray mass on the planet's surface. I think that's the gray tide, Jake said. Captain Brooks called everyone to the main meeting room. When they gathered, he pointed to a big screen that showed the planet below them. The good news is we found them, he said. The bad news is we might be too late. Half the planet is covered by this gray substance. Our sensors can't tell us what it is, but it's growing, spreading like a disease. Alex Turner stepped forward. Captain, I'm picking up signals from the other half of the planet. The signals are weak, but they're there. Someone is still alive down there. Can you talk to them? Captain Brooks asked. I think so. Give me a few hours to prepare. Commander Danny Walsh, the leader of the landing team, studied the images of the planet. Danny was a soldier, trained to fight in the worst conditions, but he had never seen anything like this. Sir, how do we know it's safe to land? What if this gray stuff is dangerous to humans? We don't know, Captain Brooks said honestly. But we came here to help. We can't help from up here. Lisa Chun raised her hand. Captain, I've been studying the gray areas with our sensors. It's not just covering the ground. It's eating it. The gray stuff is breaking down everything it touches into smaller and smaller pieces, trees, buildings, even rocks. Everything becomes part of the gray mass. Jake felt his blood turn cold. What about people? Lisa looked away. I don't know. I hope not. 2 hours later, Alex Turner managed to contact the survivors on the planet. The main screen showed a strange image. The alien looked like a tree made of crystal, with branches that glowed with soft light. When it spoke, the sound was like music. Greetings. Small heat beings, Alex translated as the alien spoke. I am Resonance of Seven Suns. We did not expect answer calls from the young star children. Jake looked at Alex. Young star children? I think that's what they call us. Our sun is young compared to theirs. Captain Brooks stepped forward. Tell them we came to help. Ask them what this gray tide is. Alex spoke into the microphone, making sounds that were half words and half music. The alien's crystal branches glowed brighter for a moment, then dimmed. He says the gray tide is old death hunger. It was made by the Gone Ones, a people who lived long ago. They created it to clean their worlds, but it would not stop. It ate their worlds too. Now it moves. From star to star, eating everything. Danny Walsh leaned forward. Ask him how many worlds it has destroyed. The alien's response made everyone in the room go quiet. He says ... hundreds, maybe thousands. Whole civilizations have been eaten by the gray tide. His people are the last. On this world, soon they will be gone too. Jake stared at the screen. The crystal alien looked so sad, so tired. Ask him if anyone has ever fought it and won. The alien's branches drooped when Alex asked the question. No, all who try to fight are eaten. The gray tide learns from what it eats. It becomes stronger, smarter. It cannot be stopped. Captain Brooks was quiet for a long moment. Ask him if we can come down and help them escape. The alien's light flickered. He says yes, but be careful. The gray tide senses life. It will come for you too. Danny Walsh picked his best people for the landing team. Jake volunteered to go, along with Lisa Chun and Alex Turner. They would take 2 small ships down to the planet's surface. As they prepared to leave, Maria Santos pulled Jake aside. Be careful down there. If that gray stuff is as dangerous as they say, you might not get a second chance. We have to try. Jake said, those people asked for help. We can't just leave them. The flight down to the planet was scary. As they got closer, Jake could see the gray tide better. It looked like thick mud, but it moved in patterns that made his eyes hurt to watch. Here and there, he could see pieces of buildings sticking out of the gray mass. The remains of a civilization. They landed in a city that was still free from the gray tide. The buildings were made of the same crystal material as the aliens, and they sang in the wind. Beautiful music filled the air, but it was sad music. The song of a dying world. Resonance of 7 suns met them at the landing site. Up close, he was even more beautiful than on the screen. His crystal branches caught the light and threw rainbows everywhere. But Jake could see cracks in the crystal. The alien was hurt, maybe dying. Welcome, young star children, he said through Alex's translation. You are brave to come to a world of ending songs. How many of your people are left? Lisa asked. Few. Very few. The gray tide has eaten most of our world song. Soon it will eat the rest. Danny Walsh was studying the gray tide in the distance. It was maybe a mile away, but it seemed to be moving toward them. How fast does it spread? Faster when it finds life to eat. It hungers for the thinking light that lives in minds. Jake felt sick. You mean it eats thoughts? All things. Bodies, minds, dreams, memories. All becomes gray. All becomes nothing. The alien led them through the crystal city. Everywhere Jake looked, he saw signs of a great civilization. Art made of living light. Gardens where crystal flowers grew. Libraries where knowledge was stored in singing stones. And all of it was about to be destroyed. Your people are amazing, Jake said. You've built something beautiful here. Beauty does not matter to the gray tide, Resonance of 7 Suns replied. It cares only for hunger, for growth, for eating. As they walked, Jake noticed something strange. The gray tide seemed to move in straight lines, in perfect patterns. It was organized like a machine. But when he looked at the crystal city, everything was curved and flowing, like music made solid. Alex, he said quietly, ask him about the patterns. Why does the gray tide move like that? After Alex translated, the alien's branches dimmed with sadness. The gray tide is old order hunger. It makes all things the same, all things gray, all things dead. It cannot understand the new songs or the different lights. It only knows sameness. Something clicked in Jake's mind, an idea so crazy it might work. What if that's its weakness? Jake's idea would not leave him alone. All night, he thought about what Resonance of 7 Suns had said. The gray tide only understood sameness. It moved in straight lines and perfect patterns. But the Crystal City was full of curves and chaos. In Beauty Dot the next morning, he found Dr. Emma Foster in the ship's library. Emma studied human culture and art. She had brought books and music and paintings with her on the mission. Most people thought it was a waste of space, but Emma believed that art was what made humans special. "Emma, I need your help with something." "Crazy," Jake said. Emma looked up from a book of poetry. "How crazy? What if we could use human art as a weapon?" Emma laughed, but then she saw that Jake was serious. "I'm listening." Jake explained his idea. The gray tide was like a computer that only understood simple commands. It could not handle things that were random or creative or confusing. Human. Art was full of contradictions and chaos. Maybe that chaos could break the gray tide's programming. "It's impossible," Emma said, but she was already thinking. Although, music is just sound waves. Paintings are just light patterns. If we could turn them into some kind of signal. Dr. Ben Carter, the ship's doctor, joined their conversation. Ben had been studying how the gray tide affected living things. "I've been looking at brain scans of the crew," he said. "Human brains are messy. We think about 5 different things at once. We hold opposite ideas at the same time. Most species think in straight lines, but humans think in spirals." Jake felt excited. "So you're saying human thinking is chaotic?" "Very chaotic. And that might be exactly what we need." They took their idea to Captain Brooks. He listened carefully as Jake explained about using human creativity as a weapon against the gray tide. "It sounds impossible," the captain said. "Most of the best human ideas sound impossible at first," Emma pointed out. Captain Brooks was quiet for a moment. "What would you need?" "Time to work with the ship's computers. And help from Maria Santos. If we're going to turn art into a weapon, we need her engineering skills." Maria Santos was fixing a broken sensor when they found her. When they explained the idea, she stopped working and stared at them. "You want to do what?" she asked. "Turn human music and art into a signal that can confuse the gray tide," Jake said. Maria wiped her hands on her shirt. "That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Let's try it." They worked for 3 days. Emma fed human songs and poems and paintings into the ship's computer. Ben analyzed human brain patterns and turned them to mathematical formulas. Maria built a device that could broadcast the patterns as energy waves. Alex Turner helped by teaching them more about how the gray tide worked. The crystal aliens had been studying it for years. They knew it was some kind of living machine, but they could not understand how to fight it. "It learns," Alex translated as Resonance of Seven Suns explained. "Every world it eats makes it smarter, but it only learns order. It cannot learn chaos." On the 4th day, they were ready to test their weapon. They called it the Chaos Field Generator. It looked like a metal box covered in wires and blinking lights. Maria had built it to plug into the ship's power system. "How do we test it?" Danny Walsh asked. "We can't exactly ask the gray tide to come over and try to eat us." "Actually," Lisa Chun said, "we might be able to. I've been watching the gray tide's movements. It's getting closer to the city every day. At the current rate, it will reach us in 6 hours." Captain Brooks made the decision. "We wait. When the gray tide gets close enough, we turn on our chaos generator and see what happens." The waiting was the hardest part. Jake stood on the ship's observation deck, watching the gray tide creep closer to the Crystal City. It moved like thick liquid, but with purpose. It knew they were there. Emma Foster sat nearby, playing human music through the ship's speakers. The songs mixed strangely with the Crystal City's natural music, creating sounds that had never been heard before. Some of the crystal aliens came to listen. their branches glowing with curiosity. "They like it," Alex said. "They say human music is full of surprise patterns and joy chaos." Ben Carter was monitoring everyone's brain activity. "Human brains are getting more active," he reported. "The mix of our music with their music is creating new neural patterns. Patterns I've never seen before." As the sun set on the crystal world, the gray tide reached the edge of the city. Jake could see it clearly now, a wall of gray death moving toward them. It consumed everything in its path. Trees, buildings, even the ground itself disappeared into the gray mass. "It's here, Danny," Walsh said quietly. Captain Brooks turned to Maria Santos. "Power up the chaos generator." Maria's hands moved over the controls. The device hummed to life, and immediately Jake felt something change. The air seemed to shimmer. Colors became brighter. Sounds became clearer. The gray tide touched the edge of the chaos field and stopped. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the gray mass began to ripple and shake. Parts of it turned different colors. Blues and reds and yellows appeared in the gray. "It's working," Lisa Chun whispered. But then the gray tide pushed forward again. It was learning, adapting to their chaos field. The colors faded back to gray. "It's not enough," Maria said. "We need more chaos, more randomness." Emma Foster stood up. "I have an idea. What if we don't just play our music? What if we create new music? Right now, with the aliens, making something that has never existed before?" Alex quickly translated the idea to Resonance of Seven Suns. The crystal aliens' branches began to glow brightly. "He says yes. They will sing with us. Create new songs that the gray tide cannot understand." What happened next was the most beautiful thing Jake had ever experienced. The humans began to sing their favorite songs, while the crystal aliens sang their ancient melodies. The two types of music wove together, creating something completely new. Emma played piano, while Ben sang an old Earth song about rainbows. Lisa hummed a lullaby her mother had taught her. Even Danny Walsh, who said he could not carry a tune, added his voice to the chorus. The chaos field generator took all of this musical chaos and turned it into pure energy. Waves of rainbow-colored light shot out from the ship, washing over the gray tide. This time, the gray mass did not just stop. It began to break apart. Pieces of it turned bright colors and fell away like old paint. For the first time in thousands of years, the gray tide was retreating. "We did it," Jake said, hardly, believing his own words. We actually did it. But their celebration was short. The gray tide was pulling back, but it was not destroyed. It was regrouping, learning from this new type of attack. "This is just the beginning," Captain Brooks said. "We've proven that human creativity can hurt the gray tide. Now we need to figure out how to destroy it completely." Jake looked out at the Crystal City, where the aliens were still singing with joy. For the first time in years, they had hope. And that hope, mixed with human stubbornness and creativity, might just be enough to save the galaxy. The news traveled fast across the galaxy. Within a week of their first success against the gray tide, signals began arriving from star systems that had been silent for years. Civilizations that had been hiding in fear were now listening to the human broadcasts. Captain Brooks stood in the communication room, watching as more and more messages came in. Each one was from a different species, but they all said the same thing. They wanted to know how to fight back. "This is incredible," Alex Turner said, working to translate the flood of alien languages. "We're hearing from species that we didn't even know existed. Look at this one from the Rigel system. They say they've been hiding underground for 50 years, waiting for the gray tide to find them." Jake looked at the star map on the wall. Red dots marked all the worlds that had been destroyed by the gray tide. Yellow dots showed worlds that were still fighting. And now, for the first time, green dots appeared, worlds that were pushing the gray tide back. How many are using our chaos field technology? Jake asked. 12 so far, Alex replied, but they're having trouble. The device works, but not as well as it does for us. Dr. Ben Carter had been studying this problem. It's because human brains are different, he explained. We're naturally chaotic thinkers. Other species are more logical. They have trouble creating the kind of random patterns that confuse the gray tide. Emma Foster had an idea. What if we teach them? Not just how to build the machines, but how to think like humans. Captain Brooks raised an eyebrow. You want to teach aliens how to be chaotic? Why not? We've been teaching each other for thousands of years. Music, art, poetry, all the things that make us human. Maybe it's time to share that with the galaxy. Commander, Lavra Adams was put in charge of the new teaching program. Lavra was good at organizing people and getting them to work together. She had helped coordinate rescue efforts during the climate wars on Earth. We'll need to go to each world personally, Lavra said. We can't just send instructions. We need to show them how to be creative, how to embrace chaos. Jake volunteered to be part of the teaching teams. Over the next few months, he traveled to more worlds than he had ever imagined. Each one was different, but they all had one thing in common. They were afraid. On a world called Vega Prime, Jake met the singers. They were tall, thin beings who communicated through pure sound. They had beautiful voices, but they only sang ancient songs that had been passed down for generations. Try singing. Something new, Jake suggested through his translator. Something that has never been sung before. The lead singer looked confused. But what would we sing? All the good songs have already been written. Jake sat down with them and taught them about improvisation, about making up words as you go along, about singing what you feel in the moment, not what you are supposed to feel. The first time the singers tried to improvise, they were terrible. Their voices cracked and wobbled. They forgot words and sang off key. But Jake clapped and cheered. Anyway, that was perfect, he said. That was chaos. That was human. Slowly, the singers began to understand. They started mixing their ancient songs with new words. They began to sing about their fears and hopes and dreams. And when they turned on their chaos field generator, it worked better than ever before. On another world, Jake met the builders. They were mechanical beings who thought in straight lines and perfect angles. Teaching them about chaos was even harder. But if something is not efficient, why would you do it? One of the builders asked. Jake picked up a piece of scrap metal and began to bend it into random shapes. Because sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected places. Because sometimes being wrong leads you to being right. The builders watched as Jake created a twisted sculpture that served no purpose at all. To them, it was wasteful and pointless. But when they learned to create their own random, useless art, their chaos generators became powerful enough to push back the gray tide from 3 different continents. Dr. Kevin Price, the mission's physicist, was working on a bigger problem. How could they scale up the chaos field technology to protect entire star systems? We need something bigger than individual generators, Kevin explained to the team. We need to create a network, a web of chaos that covers multiple worlds. Kevin worked with scientists from dozens of different species. Together, they designed massive chaos field stations that could protect whole solar systems. But they needed something special to power them. Human emotions, Ben Carter suggested. Love, hope, laughter, even sadness. They create the strongest chaos patterns we've ever measured. This gave Jake an idea. What if we ask people to help? Not just the scientists and soldiers, but everyone. Families, children, artists, dreamers. Lavra Adams loved the idea. She began organizing what she called chaos concerts across the galaxy. Beings from different worlds would come together to create art, music, and stories. The emotional energy from these gatherings would be collected and used to power the great chaos. Field stations. The first chaos concert was held on a liberated world in the Centauri system. Thousands of beings gathered in a great crystal amphitheater. Humans sang alongside crystal aliens, mechanical builders, and gaseous cloud creatures. The music was strange and wonderful, and completely chaotic. Jake stood on the stage, conducting a choir of 50 different species. They were singing a song that Emma Foster had written about hope and friendship and the power of working together. The translation devices could barely keep up with all the different languages, but somehow the meaning came through. "We are the voices in the darkness," they sang. "We are the colors in the gray. We are the chaos that breaks the machine. We are the song that lights the way." The chaos field generators hummed to life, powered by the emotional energy of the concert. Waves of rainbow light shot out into space, creating a protective barrier around the entire star system. On his home world, Resonance of Seven Suns felt the change immediately. The gray tide that had been pressing against their defenses suddenly retreated. For the first time in decades, new crystal flowers began to grow in the liberated soil. "The young star children have taught us to sing new songs," he said to his people. "Songs of hope in chaos and beautiful disorder. The gray tide cannot understand these songs. It cannot eat what it cannot comprehend." Back on the New Horizon, Captain Brooks watched the reports coming in from across the galaxy. World after world was pushing back the gray tide. Species that had been enemies for centuries were working together, united by their shared love of creative chaos. "How many worlds are free now?" Jake asked. 47, Lavra Adams replied, "and more every day. The network is growing faster than we expected." Jake looked out at the stars. They seemed brighter now, full of color and life. The gray tide was still out there, still dangerous, but it was no longer unstoppable. "What happens now?" he asked. Captain Brooks smiled. "Now we finish what we started. We're going to save the galaxy, one song at a time." 2 years had passed since the first Chaos concert. Jake Morrison stood in the command center of Rainbow Station, the most beautiful thing humans had ever built. The station was huge, bigger than any city on Earth. It floated in space above the crystal world where they had first met. Resonance of 7 Suns. The station was painted in every color imaginable. Blues and reds and yellows and greens swirled across its surface in patterns that made no sense, but somehow looked perfect. It was chaos made beautiful, and it served as the heart of the Galactic Alliance. "Admiral Morrison, we have another report." "From the Outer Rim," said Lieutenant Jenny Walsh, Danny's younger sister, who had joined the mission 6 months ago. "The Vorthan system is officially gray tide free." Jake smiled. Admiral Morrison. He still was not used to the title. Captain Brooks had been promoted back to Earth to lead the expanded space program, and Jake had taken command of the Alliance. "Fleet, how many does that make?" Jake asked. 137 liberated systems, Jenny replied. "And 43 new species have joined the Alliance this month." Through the great window of the command center, Jake could see ships arriving and departing. Vessels from dozens of worlds all working together. Crystal ships that sang as they flew. Metal ships built by the mechanical builders. Cloud ships that looked like floating storms. And human ships, small but brave, leading the way. Dr. Lisa Chun, now the Alliance Chief Science Officer, walked up to Jake with a tablet full of data. "The gray tide is retreating faster than we ever hoped," she said. "Our network of chaos field stations has pushed it back to only 12 star systems. 12 systems out of thousands. Jake shook his head in wonder. When they had first arrived at the crystal world, the gray tide had seemed unstoppable. Now it was running scared, fleeing from the chaotic joy that filled the galaxy. "Any word from the Deep Space Scouts?" Jake asked. "Yes, and you're going to." Like this, Lisa's eyes were bright with excitement. "We found something amazing in the Goldilocks Nebula. A whole cluster of worlds that were abandoned centuries ago when the gray tide first appeared. But the chaos fields have cleared out all. The gray residue. Life is returning." In the station's central park, children from 20 different species played together on the grass. Human children ran alongside young crystal beings, their laughter mixing with the musical chimes that crystal children made when they were happy. Mechanical builder children clicked and whirred as they built impossible toys with organic Vorthan children who could shape their bodies like clay. Emma Foster sat under a tree, playing guitar for a group of young aliens. She was teaching them an old Earth song about rainbows and dreams. The children sang along in their own languages, creating a beautiful chaos of sound. "Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue," they sang, "and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true." Jake found resonance of 7 suns in the garden, where the crystal aliens grew their living art. The old alien had recovered completely from his injuries, and his crystal branches sparkled with new growth. "Greetings, song friend Jake," the alien sighed, his words translated into musical tones that Jake had learned to understand without machines. "Hello, old friend," Jake replied. "How are the new seedlings growing?" "Better than ever. The chaos light in this place helps them grow in ways we never imagined. Look." Resonance of 7 suns pointed to a grove of young crystal trees. Their branches were not the traditional silver and blue of crystal alien art. Instead, they glowed with rainbow colors, reds and yellows and purples. "The children learned chaos songs from human children," the alien explained. "Now their art grows with human colors. Soon there will be no difference between crystal song and human song. All will be Alliance song." That evening, Jake stood in his private quarters, looking out at the stars. Earth was visible as a tiny blue dot in the distance. He thought about his sister, who was now teaching alien children on Mars. He thought about his parents, who sent him letters every week telling him how proud they were. Maria Santos knocked on his door. She was now chief engineer of the entire Alliance fleet, but she still liked to visit her old friends. "Busy tomorrow?" she asked, grinning. "Why?" "We're launching the biggest chaos field generator ever built. The Rainbow Array. 50 stations linked together across 5 star systems. If it works, we'll be able to protect half the galaxy with one giant chaos field." Jake whistled. "Will it work?" "Of course it will work. It's powered by the combined emotional energy of every free world in the Alliance. Every song, every laugh. Every act of love and hope and creative chaos. The gray tide won't know what hit it." The next morning, beings from across the galaxy gathered to watch the Rainbow Array come online. Jake stood with the other Alliance leaders in the main observation deck. Alex Turner was there, now fluent in 47 alien languages. Ben Carter had become the Alliance's expert on multi-species psychology. Laura Adams commanded a fleet of ships that carried teachers and artists to newly liberated worlds. "Beginning power-up sequence," Maria announced from the engineering station. "Chaos. Field generators 1 through 50 coming online." On the main screen, Jake could see the massive generators arranged in a perfect circle around 5 star systems. They began to glow, first softly, then brighter and brighter. "Emotional energy collection at 90%, Emma reported from her console. "The concerts on all Alliance worlds are at peak performance." Across the galaxy, millions of beings were singing, laughing, creating art, and celebrating life. All of that chaotic joy was being collected and focused into the rainbow. Array, field generation at 100%, Maria announced. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The space between the generators exploded with color. Rainbow light shot out in all directions, creating a dome of pure chaos that covered 5 entire star systems. The light was so beautiful that everyone in the observation deck gasped Dot, but the real surprise came when the rainbow dome expanded beyond the star systems. It kept growing, spreading across space like ripples in a pond. Within hours, it had covered a quarter of the galaxy. How is that possible? Jake asked. Lisa Chun was staring at her instruments in amazement. The chaos field is self-sustaining. Every time it touches a world with creative beings, it gets stronger. It's feeding off the natural creativity of every species in the galaxy. Reports began coming in from across the galaxy. The gray tide was not just retreating anymore. It was disappearing completely. Wherever the rainbow light touched, the gray dissolved like shadows in sunlight. Admiral, Jenny Walsh called out, we're getting a signal from the last gray tide. Stronghold in the Omega sector. Put it on screen, Jake said. The image that appeared was strange. It showed a ball of gray matter, but this gray was different. It was not angry or hungry. It looked tired. We surrender, the gray tide said in a voice like static. We cannot understand the chaos light. We cannot eat what brings joy. We are tired of hunger. We wish to learn. Jake looked around the observation deck at his friends and allies. After all this time, the gray tide did not want to fight anymore. It wanted to learn how to be something other than gray. Tell it, Jake said to Alex, that we will teach it. We will teach it how to create instead of destroy. How to build instead of consume. How to make beautiful chaos instead of empty order. 5 years later, Jake stood in the same spot, but everything had changed. The galaxy was full of color and music and laughter. The gray tide had become the gray gardeners, beings who helped nurture new life on the worlds they had once destroyed. Rainbow Station had grown into Rainbow City, home to millions of beings from hundreds of species. And somewhere over the rainbow, of stars, children of every kind looked up at the night sky and dreamed of new adventures. Jake smiled and hummed an old Earth song. Somewhere over the rainbow, dreams really did come true.